What's up, everybody? It's Chad. I'm back again with another episode of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. This one's special because my mentor, Valerie Hubbard, is my guest today. Thanks so much for joining me today, Val.
Hey, are you talking to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I thought, yeah, hey. Thank you for having me.
Of course, I've been wanting to have you on the show, and of course, it's been real busy, so I'm glad that we're able to get you on finally and everything, and thanks for coming on today.
Thank you.
Of course. So for those of you who don't know, who maybe are new to the show or don't know who Valerie Hubbard is and never see me around her, Valerie has been my mentor for a long time on the advocacy side. So if you could, Valerie, for the people who don't know who you are, sadly, could you give us a brief introduction of who you are?
Yeah, just how I'm known in New Mexico as I began working on the medical cannabis bill in 2001 with Gary Johnson. So Governor Gary Johnson. So here I am. Here's 2024. Yeah, we've moved on down the road, made medical cannabis a real deal, and then legalization a real deal. And now we're just, that's just who I am.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the intro real quick, Val. And before we move on for the rest of the episode, I got to thank our sponsor, Monster House Consumption Lounge, actually Monster House in general. They sponsor the show, help us keep going and everything. I appreciate it, guys. And also, they're the only consumption lounge in Las Cruces right now. So if you want to check out a consumption lounge, go check them out. All right, guys, we're back to the episode. So yeah, thanks again, Val, and thanks for that it was very brief. Val actually has done a lot in the state and even in life. She's done a lot, and we'll get more to that. Not everything, of course, but we'll touch on some key things in life. Yeah, yeah. So certain reasons for that too. We won't get on that. But yeah. So did you ever think that you would be an advocate? I don't think I ever asked you this ever since the years I've known you. Did you ever think that when you were 20, 30 something years old that you'd be the advocate that you are today, or be an advocate like this at all?
To be honest, I never thought I would be an advocate like I am today, but I think I've been an advocate for cannabis since 1964, 65, and an advocate against the Vietnam War as a protester. So I've definitely put in some time there and always felt like cannabis was for the people. So I did my best to make sure they got it.
So, more or less used to just the freedom fighter stuff, really
Yes.
fighting for, better policy and everything. And yeah, I mean, even with the legislature here the first time, and we'll get into that. I just want to kind of start at the beginning. So yeah, since the 60s, a lot of history there with you and everything. And where were you at in the 60s actually? Were you in
San Francisco? I moved there in 65, just as it exploded. And then also in the 60s, I lived in Mexico at the very end of the 60s, and 70s, Marin County, and then Southern California, Las Vegas. I never quit moving around.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, and then you ended up here. What brought you to New Mexico?
I hate to say these things, to be honest. I mean, I like to be honest, but I don't know if it's good for me to say.
Be as honest as you'd like.
I was running.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
We won't say for
leave
what.
it at that.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. New Mexico happens to be, a place that you called home for a long time.
Yes.
How many years now?
I came to New Mexico in 1980, and I've been here ever since.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Before I was born.
Yeah. That's so funny. But yeah, I moved here. We moved here in 1968. My daughter and I.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So yeah, you did a lot of moving back in the day, and
Yes.
I don't know if I've ever asked you this either. When's the first time you actually used cannabis?
Actually, it was probably around, I don't know, I might have been, it was later because it wasn't exactly in my face. But definitely, I can't remember. I might have been like 19 the first time, and then didn't really do it again until I hit the early 20s, like 22, and then it was on. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever asked that before, to be honest. Like when I bring people on the show, I'm like, I never really ask anybody like in person, like, when did you first start smoking weed? Because it's not something I guess you really have a conversation with these days naturally, because you just assume, oh yeah, I smoke weed, whatever.
Yeah, we're
But
all together, so you think we're all doing it.
right, right. And we never really think about, well, when's the first time you smoked weed? And like it's actually shocking because like first time I smoked weed, I was 14. Like I was one of those kids. So
Yeah,
like hearing you, I thought you were gonna be around the same, 15, 14, like, no, my 20s. It's like,
no,
really?
there was not really cannabis around, in my high school years and that sort of thing. Um, it had to seek me out.
It had to find you.
Yeah,
And that it did. So
and
I
that
mean, you've told me these stories, a bunch of your stories before, but let's get into the New Mexico story, like how you got involved on the New Mexico side. And this story you shared a lot publicly. Would you care to share, that, how you got involved with New Mexico advocacy? And if you guys know Valerie, you know the story, but, there's a lot of new people in the industry too.
well, I got busted in let's see, 2000. I mean, 1998. For growing cannabis, and it was in my home. And I went to federal prison. It was really trumped up stuff. It was basically because I wouldn't give information on anybody or snitch anybody out, that they were going to throw the book at me. So they did, and I did federal time. And when I got out, my daughter had moved to Santa Fe, and that seemed like the proper place for me to go with her, since she was offering me a bedroom. I slept on what I call a prison cot until maybe 15 to 17 years later, before I actually could buy a bigger bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Struggle's real.
nonetheless, because I was lucky enough to have the Drug Policy Alliance come to my attention as I came to their attention. They were the ones that were here in Albuquerque, beginning to run a bill with Gary Johnson. And that's the reason that Drug Policy Alliance came here, is because of Gary Johnson being governor, and he was so open on drugs. So that they hooked up with me through folks, and we just sort of stayed hooked up from then on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
dope.
so I sort of like when I moved to to Santa Fe, I lived very close to the Roundhouse, and I just sort of became a Drug Policy Alliance grand assistant and moved on with them,
Yeah,
passing bills to
exactly.
better
And
the state of New Mexico.
yes, ma'am. And what was the first bill that you actually worked on? You got help get passed. I mean, I know this answer, but maybe not everyone else.
The very first bill that got passed that we worked on was restoring felon voting rights in the state. And that was actually one of the first, if not the first, in the country at that time. And it was replicated then all across the country in many states. But that was very important. At the same time, we were running the first cannabis bill, medical cannabis bill, but it didn't pass.
Yeah, it took a while for that bill to pass. And to be honest, it took a while for us to even
Yes, it did.
get the medical cannabis laws changed again, just to kind of update it too. And we'll get to that more because, Valerie and I, of course, have a long history. She's my mentor. Obviously, I've known her for a long time. So where do you really, before we move on to the more of the history stuff, I wanted to ask you this: where do you see the future of New Mexico cannabis going right now, as of now, before we go back into the past?
Well, I think as long as we have a strong advocacy and the folks in the industry understand that it's also their shared industry. It's to their advantage that they become advocates themselves for their industry. I think that we're going to do all right. There's going to be bumps in the road. It was a brand new industry, and we'll go through those things. But I think just building it stronger is the goal.
I
Building a
agree.
stronger bill and building a stronger program.
Yeah, just whatever's the best for the industry,
Mhm.
not the individual. And that's why I'm trying to
Right.
really push on people is, let's not cater to the individual. Let's look at the industry overall. Like
Absolutely.
individuals are going to come and go in this industry, and that's with any industry. And cannabis is no different. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because this is new for New Mexico. It's new for the nation. It's new for a lot of states. And so it's something that, and I've said this before many times, no one's done this correctly yet. I think we're getting there. New Mexico is probably doing it as close right now as it can possibly get, I think. But is it perfect? Nah, by no means is it perfect. Nothing is. But that's the beauty of being able to go and do these bills and change the laws. Okay, this isn't working, so now we need to change this. And you and I know both well, and we'll sometimes sit there and joke. It's like, well, this and this sucks. Looks like we're gonna have to change the law. This is
Or go back into rules and regulations depending on what it is that we see as a problema, a problem for the industry. So
100% because the rules those are big sometimes
yeah, the
they
rules are what become, once you pass a law, it's the rules and regs that take over. So sometimes everything's in rules and regs, and sometimes you have to open up the law. They really prefer not to open up the law unless they have to. But sometimes this is a new industry. It's only a few years old, and the law may have to be opened a number of times.
Yeah, and we're seeing that now with all the issues that we have within the industry. You and I are constantly talking about these issues and how we can tackle them and what's the best route, and really strategic stuff. But Valerie and I actually go back. I met her when I first started getting to the cannabis stuff very briefly when because Jessica Healy from DPA is actually the one who got me involved myself. So I am a product of DPA myself. So she got me involved, and actually the first time I went to the legislature, I met Val very briefly, probably maybe 5-10 minutes, while I was meeting some other representatives. But we didn't really get connected until like 2016, when I really started, getting more and more. I would say I was getting more comfortable with, the advocacy stuff and legislature stuff because, 2013, 14, 15, I had no clue what's going on still, still trying to figure out. And even these days, I'm still learning. But, Val really, mentored me throughout the years. I've learned a lot from her. I still learn a lot. And, we share a lot of the same point of views when it comes to the cannabis stuff and how this needs to run because, if you guys don't know, she's pretty much one of the people who helped create the medical cannabis program in general, the one that was passed in 2007. And it took a long time, as we said. She started in the late 90s, and it took all the way till
In 2000 was the first bill that
yeah,
we ran. Mhm.
and then in 2000 all the way to 2007. And then I didn't come into the picture to 2013, and then even then, it didn't really start kicking out to 2016, and then 2017 is when we really got the ball rolling, and 2018 is when we really got some stuff, and then 2019 is when we got that bill updated, and we have the medical cannabis laws changed. But what the interesting part of that is, like, we changed the laws, and then 2 years later, 3 years later, we legalized. 2 years later, we legalized cannabis.
Right.
That was it was kind of like, yeah, but it was kind of short lived because we didn't get to really enjoy it for as long as the program had been around. But I'm really glad that you were able to be in Santa Fe and help fight for that too, because we needed that voice of reasoning, someone that's been around for that long. Because some people forget, even on the rec side, I'm sure you've seen it. Just some people will bring things up, and I'm like, we used to do that, and they're like, what, when? And I'm like, I don't know, almost 10 years ago.
Right.
So
I
you
just
know,
wanted to say that it popped up in my memory box, and I believe that it said, I'm quoting what I remember in the memory box, but it was today of 2000. 15 that we finally, in the medical program, did the final uh, uh, amount of producers. I think it was 15. All of a sudden, we're all allowed in at one time, and that was a big deal for us at that moment. It was like hope.
It really was. That's actually when it became known, and the producers were known as the Dirty 30. That's around the time they got that nickname.
Well,
Yeah. Some people throw it around, it was a term of endearment, but back then it was a total different program. A lot of those producers, we couldn't trust back then, and it was kind of granted sometimes. But I think we had a total of 35, or is it 34? I think at our peak.
30.
30. Okay. I thought towards the adult use, I thought we got to about 34, 35. And then we lost one. Mother Earth Herbs, got taken out. I think another one got taken out too.
Top
By the end.
Organics got bought out really quick, so things changed as far as the original. And I may be wrong. There may have been a couple of more, but I just had that from the memory box that it was like a huge amount that were added on. I think we had 13, and they added this whole amount that took it to 30 at one time. And there may have been a few that just haven't popped up in my memory box since then. So
Yeah.
you might be right.
Yeah. And to let you guys know, the reason why we're bringing this up, well, not really the reason, but the history behind this is we had closed licenses in New Mexico on the medical side.
Absolutely.
Very restrictive. At our peak, we had, I think, a total of 33, 34. And that still was not enough for the whole state. So even then, having that amount was not enough. And, the parts of the state that were so rural suffered. And, today, now some of those places are doing pretty well, so, things have changed and improved in the sense from, going from so closed to so open, and, you know, may the best business win in that sense.
Absolutely.
So but so I wanted to ask you too, this is outside of the advocacy stuff and how we know each other, because I've already kind of explained that in the short layman's term, but I wanted to ask just some general questions that some people would probably wonder, and not many people know this, but you don't smoke that often these days, which getting older myself too, I can see why. What is your go-to product that you like to use outside of smoking, or products?
I do really miss smoking, and
Oh,
and
we
I
know about.
do occasionally, and I do really like a good dab. But basically, it's edible vegan gummies and uh, little bits of edibles throughout the
Yeah.
day, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
It has to be the go-to because smoking is really. I'm just a. It's not good for my lungs at this point to do
Yeah.
much smoking.
Yeah, I agree. I'm only 37, and I'm like, what? I get it. There's no way I can continue to do this my whole life. There's no way. But I'm glad that the drinks and stuff are becoming more efficient. The
Yes,
nanomulsification technologies, making edibles and drinks a little bit more available for people, because they work just quicker, and they don't have to go through the liver and all that stuff.
I think that's a great idea. I'm really for it.
Yeah, me too. And see, I went to Consumption Lounge in Albuquerque, and they had drinks there too, and it was cool. One was just like a regular can, just sitting there drinking. I was like, this is cool. I like this. This is fun.
Yeah,
They're like, you don't want a pre roll or anything? I was like, I think I'm good on this drink. I think I'm good. So it's been cool seeing that, exploring that, and I'm excited to see where that's going to go, because yeah, the people that don't or can't smoke, they need something too, and something good. So that's been pretty cool to watch. And maybe while we're in Farmington, we can see if there's a consumption lounge up there or something. um,
for
but
real.
we'll talk more about that because we got the town halls to talk about here in a second. But I wanted to ask you too, what's some advice you can give to the aspiring entrepreneurs in New Mexico really trying to make it?
My first thing always is to say, don't sell the farm for this. Don't sell your home for this. This is a very, very tough industry, and you really have to know what you're doing. You can't be just a novice and be a success. I mean, granted, there probably are a few novices that are a success. They could prove me wrong, but basically, I don't think so. I think that you have to know your market. You have to know what you can sell. You have to be very scrupulous and ethical, because ethics really show a lot in the end. And that will be a basis for you to build your whichever way you're going, whether you're a grower or whether you're an extractor infuser or whether you're a dispensary. Ethics and how you treat people and how you treat your staff, all of those things will add to being a success at this. And you really have to demand best product, and stick to that, because that's what people really want, is some really severely wonderful product, clean and bursting with energy and good stuff and sticky.
Smelling
So,
good and all that good stuff.
smelling all that stuff. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what no, that's all I can say.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Val. And that's probably some really good advice to a lot of people. And some of it I've been telling people for years, like, don't bet the farm.
Right.
This is nothing in this industry is guaranteed. And if it was guaranteed, this would be a monopoly. So that's not what we have in New Mexico, and we really want to keep it that way. Last question before we move on to our next topic. You've been my mentor for years now, but kind of throughout the years too, we've added some more newer advocates. How have you enjoyed watching your younger Padawan grow up to become an advocate, and then also still mentoring younger advocates too? Tracy and Nicole, for example. How have you really enjoyed continuing that path and watching them?
I find it very rewarding. I think it's the next opening of the path for me, and I love the young people that I work with, and I'm so pleased that they seem to enjoy being around me, and feeling like they learn something, and they have fun. So I'm just pleased about all of it, and I think that some wonderful advocates are coming up and will be able to take over and move us forward.
Me too. I agree. And yeah, I got to watch out for you and Nicole sometimes. You guys have a little too much fun together.
Yes, we can. And Tracy and I can too. I just don't see her as often. And Karina's so lovely too, as
Yes.
far as our crew. Um, so, and there are advocates out there that are just watching that are learning too.
Yeah.
It's
And
in New Mexico and in Texas also. I have that going on.
yeah, the Texas advocates, they're fighting hard. Texas
Yes.
is a hard place to fight. So,
Yeah.
I'll give them credit, because I don't know how long I would last in Texas fighting, because that's a rough place.
It's
Uh,
exhausting.
it is. And poor girls, Tracy and Nicole, they're doing dual state stuff. So,
Right.
that's exhausting. I only do a little bit for the Texas side, and even me, I'm like, oh God, I only do a little bit. So but yeah, but thank you for that, Val. And thank you for coming on here. I just wanted to ask you a few questions I probably never even asked you before, and introduce you again. We didn't need to do another history episode. That one already exists. You guys
Right.
can watch that on the last podcast I was on. Just look up New Mexico cannabis history. You'll probably find it. Valerie's on there giving everybody the history of from the beginning all the way until legalization stuff a couple years ago. Um, Maybe one day we'll do another one, but I don't see us needing to do it anytime soon.
Right.
Plus, we're waiting on Val to write her book.
Right.
So we're going to move on. We're actually going to talk about town halls and a little bit more advocating. I want to talk about this because this is something important for the industry. And Val and I keep talking about industry, how important it is to do things that's good for the industry. Well, we've been on this journey for about a year now of doing these town halls around the state. And to be honest, they were more than needed. There was something that New Mexico needed to have a voice and to figure out how to fight. Val, you have the most experience when it comes to town halls out of both of us. How have you really enjoyed like doing these town halls so far? Just a quick, little AAR from you.
I've really enjoyed them. I think it's been everyone's been different. Every place we've been has been a little different, and I think the data that we've been collecting and gathering all of last year, some of it went into a bill, and that's the whole point. Is that we are looking for what's working and what's not working in the state of New Mexico industry, and and to have a safe place for people to speak up about what is not working, or what is working. We like to hear either one, so we can use that information to go to the legislative body,
Yeah.
and that's
Definitely. And, I'll talk real quick the reason why we decided to start doing these. One, they're just important in general. They have town halls for, several different reasons. The governor actually had one here in Las Cruces a few
exactly.
weeks back. So, anybody can essentially do these, But Val and I kind of noticed that, when it came to industry stuff, there was only a certain key group of people that were being talked to and asked certain questions. It wasn't asked like throughout the whole industry or certain areas. So her and I had lunch one day, and I remember she did town halls a while back that I attended one here in Las Cruces when we were trying to get cannabis legalized. And I remember telling one of the legislators too, weeks before that we need town halls for the cannabis industry so we can actually get an overall understanding of what people actually want. I don't want one person from Albuquerque, one person from Cruces, and then maybe one person from one rural area. I need to talk to everybody. We need to talk to as many people as possible. So when we had lunch, Val and I kind of came to the consensus. She said, "Let's do town halls," and I said, "That's a good idea." And that's kind of where we came from. I mean, Val, do you want to add to that?
No, I think that was something that you and I just sort of uh, saw that needed to happen, and town halls having been a way that both you and I had utilized the state in getting around on advocacy. It just seemed like the best step to go, and that's what we did.
Yeah,
Put our crew
100%.
together and hit the road.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been fun. I really love doing these. I've been as a kid traveling in sports. I've seen parts of the state. I've been to the eastern part of the state and everything. I remember telling the girls about how it is. I totally forgot the oil jacks, but there's other parts of the state that I haven't really been able to explore or really talk to the people there because I'm just there visiting. So Farmington's one of them. I've only gone through Farmington. I never spent the night. Never really got to talk to the people there. So I'm really excited for this one. The northwestern New Mexico is by the Four Corners area. If you guys don't know, right next to Colorado, probably about 45 minutes from Durango, Colorado. So it's an interesting little market in that side of the state. Where's been your favorite place that we've gone to so far?
Um, I've actually enjoyed them all. I would say that the Albuquerque was my favorite, but I liked Las Cruces and Sunland Park, and liked the eastern side, the lower eastern side of the state that we've been in. And I'm ready to get to the north and see if folks want to talk to us and tell us about how it's working for them.
Yeah, and speaking of, what are some main reasons that you can, give to the people listening why they should come to an industry sesh town hall?
Well, we're collecting data, so it's all it's a safe place. It's not like you're linked to the data, but we take it pros and cons, and we start out many times with the cons, and folks get up and say their piece about what is not working for them. And we collect that data. The girls like write that down, and we go to the pros. And um, there are pros. There's definitely pros, and it's just us collecting data. Like I say, this is like data that we need to know about what's working in the industry and what's not. because we need to be able to voice this to our legislators so that we can see how we can like make changes here uh, to make it better, or
Yeah.
to let them know what is working, because we seem to be right now. I don't want to get ahead of anything, but we seem to be grinding into what I call a backlash right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that, and I think it's a combination of many things together that kind of create this. And I think a lot of people are blaming one issue and one thing, and we all know that's the oversaturation thing, which we both know isn't just the case. There's a lot of issues in the state that are leading to that backlash. We see this whole desperado articles popping out and this and that, and talking about how um, we're having regulation problems. The CCD is underfunded. Local authorities don't seem to want to do certain things in certain areas of the state, and the federal government seems to be kind of silent on other issues too, other than when it comes to the border checks. So yeah, it's like, well, we only get one issue fixed, and that's not even one that's really an issue in the state.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it's really important that we talk about these things. Up north, they're most likely not going to even think about the border checks, and that's fine. That's not something they have to deal with. Us down
Right.
here, we do. I know, remember in Albuquerque, when we mentioned, from one of the prior meetings, that one of the things they brought up was educating Texans, we got laughed at. And it's because they just don't understand how many Texans actually are in our market down here. Like I tell
Oh,
people, the Sunland Park market's the Texas market. That's not the New Mexico market. You know,
right.
that's Texas's market, and that's actually a glance to see what Texas is kind of going to look like in certain areas. Like what they're kind of going to lean to. That's a great way to collect data if you're someone looking to open something up in Texas. Look at Sunland Park. And the areas touching New Mexico and Texas, because you're going to get an idea of what those consumers like and want. You're going to be way ahead of everyone else if you actually do that. So we'll see who listens to that advice.
Yeah, do your research.
100%. Um, so with that being said, we'll get back to the town halls and everything. But yeah, some of the data we've collected has been surprising. Some of it not really. Some of the areas that have surprised me is like eastern New Mexico. Some of the data that we collected there, it seemed that the conservative areas were in that area of the state seemed to be more welcoming, other than Roswell, to the cannabis industry. Hobbs, to me, you weren't really shocked at all when we went to Hobbs, and they were like, "Oh yeah, they've been fine here." Pretty much hugs and kisses from everybody. And all of us were just like, "What?" Almost got pulled over on our way here. So yeah, that was shocking to me, but it makes sense. That's one of more of the I wouldn't say less conservative areas of eastern New Mexico, even though it is in eastern New Mexico. Like it's just a little more progressive than the rest for whatever reason that it may
A
be.
lot more progressive.
Yeah, and I noticed that too growing up. That we'd play them in sports and everything, and I noticed their team was just as diverse as our team. So it was like, huh, you don't really see this everywhere in the state, but they're just as diverse as us. So that's really interesting, because we were a military town, so of course it's going to be diverse, in Alamogordo. But yeah, so this next one that we're going to be at is going to be in Farmington. Like I said, it's going to be at Dreams Dispensary. I don't have the address right here, but I've been posting it all over the place. So if you guys want to go to my socials and everything, I have everything posted there. You guys can see the exact place where to be, take a screenshot, all that good stuff. It's going to be at 5 p.m. We'll be up there. We'll be talking to you guys, and I hope to see a lot of you there, because these town halls are really important. And this isn't the only one. This is just the start. We have a bunch more to go to in the state. We have that 60-day legislative session coming up soon. So we got to be prepared. And Val, I mean, how important. I can't stress how important this is, because it's very important what we're going into this legislative session, what we're going to be dealing with, especially with the people wanting to close licensing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very.
and
And we'd like to get out and see how people feel about license closure, because the media seems to be doing what I call fear stories about it. And I would like to see what folks in Farmington have to say about license closures. And everywhere we have on our tour, I would really, that's one of the things I want to hear from people, how they feel about it, so we can discuss it with the legislators.
100%. And we actually got ahead of this issue last year too. And this is something this is something that's been brought up since licensing has been open. They
Right.
pretty much wanted to open it and then close it right away. Like let everybody with money in right away and screw everyone else trying to, save money or whatever. Or
Right.
the young kid who's has entrepreneurial dreams of being in the cannabis industry, but he's only 18. Like screw that kid. Like it's a little wild. Anyway,
Right.
but yeah, I really want to hear too because it seems to me that the ones that are really wanting it are the ones either not making it, the ones not from this kind of market and used to a closed market, or the ones from the legacy side of our medical cannabis side, and they just never changed their business model, and now they're struggling because they were doing great before because no one had a choice but to go to their dispensary. But now we have so many choices; it's amazing that you actually have to try. Like you can't just open up doors and people walk in and buy weed because you're the only shop within hundreds of miles. Like that was the case in medical, but it's not the case
Right.
anymore. So yeah, this is a huge topic. We got ahead of it last year. Our data so far has told us that majority of the industry wants licenses to remain open, and it's the minority that wants them closed because this is the data. If you guys want, you can actually go to the YouTube here, the Grassy Logic YouTube under live, and most of our town halls from last year are on there, and you can actually watch. And a lot of people, had other concerns other than trying to close licensing. To be honest, we have bigger fish to fry here in New Mexico. We have way bigger issues than trying to close licensing to shut people off just to create a monopoly. So I really wanted you guys to know that, but we did get ahead of it. So we do already have data on that. We're just continuing this data on other stuff. Of course, that's going to be brought up because that's a concern to certain people. And some people are probably going to give us certain things that, as a whole, personally, we may not agree with, but we're going to write it down. And we're
Exactly.
there to be in an unbiased way. While we're there to hear what your concerns are. And this is a safe place. So it's something where you guys can go say what you want to say. We're not going to sit there and try to have a debate. We don't have time for that. We only have time to get what you guys are having concerns with, or what you don't have concerns with. You just want to say, I really like this. I don't want this to change. Because you need to say that too. That's something about working with lawmakers is you can't just say, oh yeah, I need this and this and this to change. But if you also tell them, well, I really like this and I don't want this to change, they might change that due to some dumb reason that was brought up by two
Exactly.
people, you know.
Exactly.
So and Val, you've seen that on countless times, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
In the legislature. But I can go on and on about the town hall stuff. Again, guys, we're going to be in Farmington, and then the next month we're going to be in Santa Fe, and I believe later on that month we're going to go to Silver City. Then we're going to go to Deming. Then we're going to go to back down to Sunland Park because a lot's changed in Sunland Park, and we need another update from those people down there. A bunch of new places open. Sunland Park's Little Dubai, so it's constantly growing. And then we're actually going to go to my hometown in January to Alamogordo. That should be an interesting one. Alamogordo gets a lot of Texas traffic going to Cloudcroft and Ruidoso. So I'm kind of curious to see what Alamogordo has to say. What the people over there, the Alamo folks got to say about what this industry is and how it's going. I've already talked to a couple because I'm from there, so naturally some of my friends are going to tell me. But I really want to know. That's where Eastern New Mexico starts. So I really want to see where they are with things. What about you, Val? What are you looking forward to the city-wise upcoming?
I'm looking forward to Santa Fe, of course, and I'm looking forward to everywhere because it's always an experience, and it's always an experience to meet folks in the industry in the different capacities they're in, from growers to folks who have light shops to folks who have dispos to it's just it's good to get out and meet folks where they are and see what they have to say. And I could go on about the things that they probably will be saying, but just so you know, we want you all to come out. And sometimes we have smaller groups because we go to smaller towns in the area, and sometimes, depending on the size of where we are, we have a good amount of people that show up to share their thoughts with us. And I think we're a trusted source to share with. So that's,
100%. I
yeah,
agree. Because we all come from different backgrounds and different opinions on certain things too. Not all of us agree on everything that we personally think, but as a group, we're here for the industry. What the industry wants and what the industry needs. So please, if you guys have a dispensary an hour away, it would behoove you to show up to something like this because you might have some great information or great opinions or great ideas that could help the industry. Because, like Val said, the things that we have collected has gone into bills already. So we're looking at that going again. If you guys don't know, a lot of legislators listen to us and watch what's going on in the industry. New Mexico is actually very active on that sense. So sometimes the legislators actually watch our town halls because we record them live.
yeah.
So some of the stuff that you guys are saying are directly being talked to the legislators with. So just keep that in mind. Like this isn't just being written down and forgotten. This is being written down, collected, and reported. And
To a
yeah,
white paper and handed over.
100%. Yeah. We really want a lot of this to go into a bill, and let them know this is what the industry said. This
Yes,
isn't us making stuff up, like
right.
this is what they wanted. You can go and watch the video if you wanted. And I know some have, because obviously it went into bills. And some of the arguments that came from some of the people, because I have just been shocked at some of the stuff that they've told us, not like in horror, but like just like I never thought of that. That's a good point. Or wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know it was that way here. Because New Mexico is so we're just so different everywhere that you go in the state. Like I get teased a lot because of my Otero County accent. So you have that, and then you go up north, and everyone talks a little different there. So it's important to just advocate for your industry, and that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about too. Is just being an advocate. You don't have to do what we do. Set up town halls. It's as simple as just showing up. I tell people all the time, 98% of advocacy work is showing up. The other 2% is talking for the 1 to 2 minutes that you're allotted, and then maybe talking to a legislator or two afterwards. That's it. That's really a lot of what it is, and then just showing up. I mean, Val, what are some tips to people who are wanting to advocate or not really sure how to start? Because I get that question a lot.
Well, it is, as you say, showing up. And uh, uh, I want to say, if once we like do get something into a bill, that we will send out information because we collect emails while we're out there. And we will send out information to let you know what's going on right now with the bill that we're watching that we want to see get passed. Or it might be a bad bill that's against the industry. And we want to get that information out there so that you can always have your representative or your senator on speed dial in your phone, because it's so easy for you in the far reaches of the state to just call them up and tell them you're calling about bill number so, and what it's called, and why you're calling is because it's important to you to see that this is passed. It's important for your industry. And they must take every name uh, of every person that's called, your name and phone number, so that they can give that to the representative or senator that you might be calling. And it's very simple to do that, and that works really well from the far reaches of the state, because not everybody can be in Santa Fe by any means. And if
100%.
there's a call for folks to come to Santa Fe, then we'd like for as many to show up as possible.
100%. Even carpooling, down in the South, if someone wants to drive, take shifts, whatever. I went with Jeffrey Castillo from High Lonesome last year. He's the one that went with me, and we all went there on an emergency fight to, save drive-throughs, and we carpooled. If we could get 20 people, 30 people, if we could get 100 different, people from the industry there, that would be great. I
That'd
don't know
be
if that's going to
great.
happen. Huh?
That would be great. And I could tell you that it certainly catches the attention of the legislators. even
Yeah.
if you show up in small groups of 4, 5 to 7. Yeah, or anything bigger is astounding for them. But in small groups, it's much appreciated by them that we actually show up and speak to them about
Yeah.
what's important to us.
100%. I agree. And when I was up there, they were begging for us to be up there. They thanked us. Said, "Thank you for showing up. We want to hear from you guys. We want to hear this." And so that's another reason why the town halls exist too, because we understand that not everybody can. So we can at least give them this information. But going up there and telling them does a lot more than just giving them this information. Say the industry wants this. When you go there and physically tell them yourself, "Hi, I'm so and so from this such and such cannabis company. I think this and this and this bill, this and this. I would like to see this added, or I would like to see this bill passed due to this and this." Um, that does way more than anything else, because they can say, "My constituent from this place and blah 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 told me this and this. So I would like for this," or "My constituents, several from this place, I had 10 dispensaries approach me and tell me that they don't want this in the bill, and then it would be bad for my people in this area. So I am not going to vote for this." And then they give us
Right.
reasons why. And it could take two people. And I've told this to many times, on the podcast. All it takes is two people from constituent to turn into constituents. That's it. Two people is plural. So, that legislator can just say, "My constituents believe this," and they don't have to tell you how many of those constituents are. It can just be constituents. So it only takes two people really to change things sometimes. So
That's
better in numbers, but more than two is all we need sometimes.
Yes, and the power of the phone is there in your hand. And that is so important too, because they must log every single phone call. So if a senator or representative is getting like 10 or 12, 15, 20 calls on a particular bill that they want to see go through, they listen to that. And the same way with something that you don't want, such as the drive-throughs, that you have to like let them know that you do not want this to pass. It will hurt so many people, and the reasons why.
100%. And be careful with the emails. I learned this from Senator Sol last year during Las Cruces week. When you email your legislators, you get those, copy and paste ones where they send it for you. You don't have to do anything. It's all long and it's all intelligent. Yeah, at least add two sentences or a paragraph of your own words, because according to them, if they see that and they notice it's a copy and paste, delete. They don't even read it. They have to accept it and receive it. But, if it's something that's going to waste their time, they're going to delete it. So either do your own words or just call and use your own words, because that way you can say this and this, or you can read something off that pre did yourself. So, uh,
Exactly.
yeah, showing up in person is always the best, but second best would be calls. I would leave emails and writing in for the very last thing that you want to do, more or less to have like record. But yeah, in person calls always the best. When I'm at the legislature, I always show up to their offices, and I'm willing to show people how to go about the legislature stuff. It's not hard. It can be a little daunting. There's a lot of people there. There are some rules you have to follow while you're viewing things, and while you're going. I kept getting yelled at because I kept getting too close to the railing. It's just, not even touching. I got too close to the railing, so I kept getting yelled at. So there's little stuff like that, little nuances. But it's really not that bad. You have to keep in mind that these people work for you. They work for all of us. We voted for them. In New Mexico, our legislators don't get paid. They get a stipend during the session, but that's all they get. So you just have to remember that we elected them there to do a certain job, and that's the job that we want them to do, not the other way around. So I think certain legislators think that they work for themselves, but instead they actually work for the people of New Mexico. And I think they need to be reminded that. And why not the cannabis industry? Why can't we remind them that? So
I
yeah.
think from my experience that the legislators here, because we are a citizens legislative body, and we are the citizen advocates, that it's very appreciative. I just remind that folks have use your manners. Don't get fired up, or don't be, like saying God dang this, like, or something. You just need to have your manners. I always say if you dress like them, they hear you better. But I
I'm
don't want
guilty.
anybody to like cut their t-shirts down. But anyway, it's just it's a matter of like respect, and I find that they're very respectful in return, and I've found to be many excellent servants in the legislature that since I've worked there. Mhm.
100%. And same with me. Early on in my advocacy years, I was way more aggressive than I needed to be. We had a different mindset of how this works, but we had a wake up call. Bill McCamley actually was the one that pretty much told us we're assholes and who wants to work with assholes. And we're like, thanks for letting us know. I appreciate it. And that's when we learned, you had to change things. You can't, no one wants to work with an asshole. He was
That's
100%
right.
right. And I think, that conversation with Bill McCamley all the time, because that was a night and day shift for me in my advocacy world, was for the fact that I realized I was too aggressive. Like, yeah, they work for me and they should do what we want, but who wants to work for an asshole? Like they're not going to want to listen to me. So, like there's a respect thing that needs to happen. And Valerie's 100% completely right. Don't go there yelling at them, you mother effer this, you did this, blah blah blah, because nothing's gonna happen, and then you're gonna make the cannabis industry look bad. Every time that something bad happens, we all look bad, guys. These people that aren't doing things right with their shops and breaking all the laws makes all of us look bad. The bad kid list, I know I post that and it's kind of funny for certain people. That makes us all look bad, guys, because if you look at some of those violations, some of them are really dumb, and really shouldn't be going on. Like some people just not using biotrack. You have to use biotrack, I'm sorry. So things like that, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, for advocating stuff, if you guys ever have any questions, let me know. um the best thing you can do is just pay attention. Like I know I'm posting news all the time and stuff like that. Maybe if you find something, post it, tag me, I'll share it and I'll tag everybody else too. Like everybody can be an advocate, and we can't be everywhere. We're humans and we got to sleep too. So that's really all I have for that conversation. Val, do you want to add anything before we go to our very last conversation for the day?
I think we talked that one out.
I think so. I think we talked about it more than enough. I really hope to see you guys at the town hall though at Farmington this week. Actually Friday. And I hope to see you guys here soon. By the time this releases, we'll have like one more day left. So hopefully, maybe if some of you have no clue about it, you hear it in time and you get there. If not, we'll have another town hall in Santa Fe, so it'll be up the north, just the opposite side. Hopefully, we'll see you guys there. But anyway, we're going to move on to our last and final topic, and this one's actually interesting. And I made Val aware of this earlier because it's actually kind of huge, the fact that this is even said. And it's the U.S. health authorities, where the U.S. health authorities need to play a larger role in cannabis policy from a report. And this was actually funded by our federal government. So that's what's actually kind of cool to me is like, okay, this came from our government, and our government saying, yeah, we need to be a little more involved with this because it's a little messed up. And I'll read some of the stuff, what their suggestions are. But before I do, Val, do you have anything on this? What do you feel about them being more involved in the policy making for certain things?
Well, I sort of see all of this as a run up to what we don't want to happen, which is descheduling.
Hmm.
I mean, we want to have a descheduling, but I think it looks like to me that this kind of stuff and these kind of papers and this kind of research is coming up because they're taking an interest now because the rescheduling is on the horizon.
Yeah, 100%. And it's gonna have to happen. And the report is suggesting that the CDC, or the Center of Disease Controls, kind of, not want to say interject, but kind of gives their opinion on certain things when it comes to the policy making of this, because it's really important. Like we see these recalls happening here in New Mexico. We see these carts in California that have all these pesticides that are being found from third party tests afterwards. So there is a component where the CDC is going to have to come in and do something anyway. And I've told people before, if you think we have some government entities to deal with now, wait till federal legalization.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, if it gets decriminalized, we're most likely going to be under the ATF, so it might be the ATCF. So we're going to be dealing with them as well. But it'll be a little bit better. You know, at least won't be breaking the law and all this other stuff. But we will have to deal with other things, and that's the cost we pay to be in the industry. You know, that's just it is what it is. But you know, 280E would be gone, and I think all of us would be happy with that if that's the case. But I wanted to give a little tidbit of this, a quote from it. It says that we'd like the federal government to step up to provide some leadership in this area, said Dr. Stephen Touche. I think I said that right. I have no clue. Of the University of Southern California, who chaired the committee behind the National Academics of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine report. The CDC and the National Institute of Health sponsored the report. So yeah, it was sponsored by our federal government, and this is actually really almost exciting because some of the stuff that they recommended, I'm like, well, that makes sense. Some other things, I'm like, but you know, these are just suggestions. So I'll read some of the suggestions off. So this is what they recommended for the CDC, what they wanted from them: develop and evaluate health campaigns about cannabis, specifically for parents, young people, pregnant women, and people older than 65. I think that's great. I love that. Education is needed anywhere. I'm all for education, especially for cannabis. What do you think?
Well, I'm totally open to education, and I'm open to education about full spectrum cannabis. And I think that this gimmick of high THC has been done for the first jumps into legalization, and especially because that's what folks were asked for. But there is a real need for having full spectrum and for people to be educated, especially this group that we're talking about, folks over 65. Now, that doesn't include me, but just kidding.
That was only 50. No, and you're correct. You know, the younger kids and then the older crowd, you know, they both need a lot of the education, you know,
Yes.
because the younger kids are obviously going to have less experience just due to age. And then the older crowd comes from an era where cannabis was seen as the devil. And, you know, that's not going to change for some time now. 20, 30 years from now, that might be different.
Exactly.
We'll just have to worry about educating the younger crowd. But yeah, that's a completely correct, you know, older adults are one of the leading users of cannabis, and they're actually one of the leading ones who are switching from pills, alcohol, whatever, to cannabis because it's just safer and it's better on their body. You know, like it kind of sucks to take a pill and have to take a pill to fix what that other pill is causing, even though it's supposed to fix what it's meant to fix, and it gets a big old mess. You know.
Yeah.
So that was that one. I really like that suggestion. I agree. How they go about it, I have no clue. They could drop the ball. But the second suggestion on that is monitor cannabis cultivation, sales, and use health impacts. So what that means is, you know, how the use of cannabis impacts the health of the public, you know, and that should be monitored. You know, like we need to know. We're still learning stuff about our beloved plant. We know it's safer than most other substances out there. But we're still learning things. You know, maybe there's certain people that can't have cannabis for whatever reason, or maybe the reason we think they can't have it is the wrong reason. And monitoring it will give us the answers. As it for cultivation, monitoring that sales, I get kind of weary because right now the program is kind of overly regulated. If we have the federal government and the states doing that, I kind of feel that they would kind of trip over each other and then we would end up with a huge mess. I mean, what do you kind of feel about that part? Should it be just left up to the states to monitor?
If it's going to be left up to the states, is my concern. What is going to be left up to the states? Are they going to just like wipe out everything that we've done and set up their own thing? Or are they going to allow states to continue to do that? So I have a concern there. So that's what
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one because you know the whole monitor the sales and all that. I'm like, oh, the health impacts I can see, but the other ones I'm like,
yeah,
that
cultivation and all of that stuff. I mean, it gets into, you know, how much monitoring do we need?
And every state has a Department of Ag. You know, just have the Department of Ag take over it and take care of it. They already deal with every other agriculture stuff within that state. So why not have them deal with this? You know, so I feel the same way here in New Mexico. I kind of feel that in the future we should kind of push to have Department of Ag deal with the cultivation side versus the CCD, who may or may not have the best practices in mind for the agricultural industry, because they're not agricultural specialists. They're
That's right.
bureaucratic specialists, if anything. So
Yeah.
yeah, the bureaucracy of it all. So the last one on this is a
Department of, I'm sorry, but I
no,
was
no, go
going to
ahead.
say, and the Department of Agriculture is a also a bureaucracy, but we do have access to. I do believe that the cultivation should eventually end up in the hands of the Department of Agriculture.
Yeah, me too. Plus, they're down here in Cruces, so it'd be easier to talk to
Yeah.
them. Shout out to the Department of Ag here in Cruces. They're good people. I actually have a really good relationship with them. Gino's shaking his head. I'm sure he knows them too. It's cool that we only have one government entity down here. It's like, all right, well, at least it's Department of Ag. That's cool.
Yes.
Yeah, it's that's fine. And the last one that they have for the CDC is to create best practices for state regulation, including ways to limit youth access. So this right here seems like they want to allow the states to have power. I'm not sure what or how much. That's what scares me, is I'm not sure where they're going to stop and allow. Like they need to allow the states a lot more leeway on certain things. Like right now, the states do have the most leeway because there's no federal regulations whatsoever, other than it's illegal. You pay us 280 and we'll leave you alone.
Right.
And that seems to be working fairly well, with spots here and there where some experiments are still going on. Like I said, we haven't figured out the best way to regulate cannabis just yet. Um, so I see that. The limit youth access thing, I think every state has something in place for that, except the ones that have cannabis illegal. Those ones don't have anything really in place other than penalties for when a youth gets caught with cannabis, which is kind of doing the opposite of what we're trying to do. We're trying to prevent them from getting it in the first place versus punishing them once they already have it. Like that's
Right.
not fixing the issue. That's just making it worse. So that right there, I see, but at the same time, states that have legal cannabis already have things in place already, and they're actually very strict about it. Here in New Mexico, I can't go into any dispensary without being carded. It's fine. I'm okay with it. I actually prefer that. So that way I know kids aren't getting cannabis and they can't blame that on us. It's either coming from someone the kid knows, a friend, a family member, or they got it from the streets. Those are usually the ways that the kids get cannabis. It's not from a dispensary. I don't see 10-year-olds walking inside of there. If you do, call the CCD and let them know. They're not playing around when it comes to that.
Right.
But it's something that I don't see for myself ever. And I'm glad. Kids don't need to be in a dispensary. And they're really strict on it. How do you feel about those suggestions for the CDC?
Well, I definitely can see that I feel like we're very tight here, so I feel like you do, and I have to say one thing for me is that the packaging is so together that I have difficulty with my arthritic hands, even opening the darn stuff. It's like,
Val, even the young people have a hard time with them.
it's like, what is it that I'm missing here?
I've seen people just take scissors and just
I scissor it across because my hands just cannot do it. And so I do not see too many children getting into that as far as like falling off of a counter and being down to the floor. That kind of children and children that are older are good. You need to lock it up and keep it away from them if that's your big concern. So
yeah,
that's all.
parents, you need to
Yeah.
ensure you keep the
It's
cannabis
like
away
the
from your kids.
guns, it's like the whatever, you need to keep that away from them. And also, you'll save money on your stash.
Right? Like I remember being a kid, like parents would mark the line where the alcohol was. So, they'll know what the
Right.
kids are drinking it, of course, putting water in it. So, yeah, it's a a cat and mouse thing, but you're responsible for your own kid. So,
That's
if you're going to do substances in your own house, it's up to you to ensure your kid isn't getting it. That's on you if they do. Kids are crafty. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Like they think that we don't know what they're doing, but most likely we've already done it.
Yes.
So yeah, we've already done it 10 times. So yeah, just make sure you're keeping away from your kids, keep it locked up. The last thing we need is to hear a kid had to go to the hospital because he had 1,000 milligram edible or something crazy.
For real.
Um, and all that. So for Congress, they had some suggestions too. There's only two that I saw on there. The first one is close a loophole, and this one kind of probably has to do with the kids thing. Close a loophole that allows intoxicating products derived from hemp to be widely sold, even in states where other cannabis products are illegal. Now, this one right here, I'm kind of like, what the fuck? Because the 2018 hemp, or excuse me, farm bill that had hemp in it just caused a lot of confusion because now we have states that have legal cannabis with regular THC, then you have these hemp products, and then they're claiming them as the devil. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't really like the process that they're using to get to the end product, of like Delta 8, Delta O, etc. But like where does it stop? Where does it end essentially? Like, we're attacking the same damn plant. It's just different levels. And so like to me, something like that doesn't make sense. Like we fix this issue when we decriminalize cannabis and we kind of put everything together and figure out, okay, how are we going to do hemp products and cannabis products? Because they're essentially the same thing. At the end of the day, just one is a little bit different because of the numbers, the arbitrary number that the government decided to go with, the 0.3% or whatever. And even now, they're thinking about going to 1% with the recent bill that Rand Paul introduced last week. So if it goes to 1%, like what does this do? I think what the issue is, there isn't enough regulations around the hemp industry. I don't think we need to make it the devil. I think they just need to regulate a little bit more. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's like, well, you hit it on the nail there, whatever, head on the nail, or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel with it. The hemp industry just needs a little bit more regulating. Not just outright banning things. Just regulate a little bit more. Fix the issues that you have with it.
I say the same thing, and I have to say, in the state of Texas, that is their medical bill, is the hemp bill. It's just so frigging absurd. So that is something that hopefully Texas uh, may get a jump on that somehow. But I want to tell you, I have had the uh, access to these hemp products like gummies, etc., the Delta 8s and that, and they're disgusting. So I would not
I agree with
recommend. I mean, I know people are buying them in Texas because they don't have access to any other way to mind altering of any sort. So other than alcohol, but yeah, it's really ridiculous stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of the times the hemp products come from a very inferior plant product to start with. If you start with
Exactly.
a very inferior plant, that
Stop.
was grown very poorly, you're going to end up with an inferior product. You can only polish a turd so much. That's the only way to put it, really. If you end up with a bad product, it may have been just a bad product to start it with all around. And a lot of those products, that's where they come from. Just these acres of nasty hemp that was just thrown out there and not really cared about, just wanting the money kind of thing. So, yeah, I kind of feel that just more regulation needs around it. The second one that they have for Congress is remove restrictions on the Office of National Drug Control Policy that prevents it from studying the effects of cannabis legalization. This one I do like, and it's because cannabis needs to be studied, and legalization of cannabis needs to be studied too. Kind of like what we're doing with the town halls, what's working, what's not working. That's essentially what this does. However, I kind of feel that's not the only one that needs to be studying the effects of legalization. I think that other organizations, companies, et cetera, need to study it too, not just one. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Uh, I just got shivers on the thought of the ONDCP. I kind of lost thought there for a minute.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
ONDCP has been such a part of my past. But anyway, I do think that those things are possibilities. I mean, I guess I agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it needs to be studied. Like
It does
we have
need
to
to be
study it.
studied, and so if it's going to be the ONDCP, okay.
It's like, okay, shit. Yeah, I saw the flashbacks go over you. Just gloss your eyes. Like, ah, shit.
I just drifted off for a moment into PTSD.
All right, and for the last suggestion that they had, this one is for the individual states. They want to require training and certification for cannabis retail staff. Now, this one's interesting, and to be honest, like we have the server's permit, you have to get your food handlings permit, blah blah blah. There just isn't enough education in cannabis as is that. As of right now, we kind of do need something like that. As for cost of this, I don't know where it's going to come from. This is just a suggestion. But I do know something like this does cost money. It costs money to train people. So if it's going to cost the business money, I don't know. Is it going to be free? Is it going to be something that the individual staff member has to pay for themselves? Kind of like when you're a server or bartender, you have to pay for your alcohol server permit. I don't know. But to me, this is something that's in other industries. And to be honest, it would probably help us out and keep us more educated and updated with certain things and get us away from this whole THC only push kind of thing, because like Val said, it's been a ridiculous arbitrary thing. It was just a pretty much just a money push, like how can we get the most money for the cheapest? All right, we're going to produce this 30% THC plant and push it as that the best ever. It may not be. Yeah, maybe. Allegedly. The next thing they have is automatically expunge or seal records for low-level cannabis-related offenses in states that have decriminalized cannabis. Now, a lot of states have actually done this. New Mexico's one. Of course, it's not perfect. There's a few things we need to fix, but I kind of feel that certain states are already kind of on the path for this. But them suggesting that states should do that anyway tells me that it's something that is working and that they like. What do you think about that?
No, I totally agree with that. I think that even folks like me that I consider have very low level offenses, but because it's federal, it adds stuff that's kind of crazy that I will never be in that part. But am I grateful and hopeful that for everyone to have those records expunged? And one of the uh, uh, bills that I passed, worked on, that I'm very proud of, that was also replicated around the country, was back around 2008, I think 2007 or 8, and it was ban the box, which was to ban the felony box on uh, folks seeking jobs in the state of New Mexico,
Yeah.
so that they didn't have to check that, because our studies showed that 70% of all of those resumes went straight to the garbage once somebody had checked that. So definitely people need to have their records cleaned up for just what is just low level offenses that should have never happened anyway.
Yeah, and then we wonder why they go back to a life of crime because it's the only way they can make money.
It's like,
Yeah. So I'm thankful for that. That helps, people a lot tremendously. We obviously have a lot to work to do. I've been hearing the arguments lately, one of the presidential candidates who recently came out and said that, she's for cannabis legalization, she locked people up, et cetera, et cetera. Well, how many other people have locked people up since people have been in office? Pretty much every single president that has sat in office has locked people up for cannabis. Cannabis legalization is a fairly new idea. And well, not a new idea in our Congress, but it's a new popular idea that's starting to gain more momentum. So pretty much most people that are pro cannabis now weren't at some point in the past, maybe 8, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. There's people that have been in Congress for 30 plus years. 40 something years, like some of those people that were anti-cannabis 40 years ago are now pro-cannabis now. So people are going to change their stances. Politicians politic all the time. They're going to change their stances. That they change their stances for votes, and that's probably what you're going to see. But to get things changed, we have to go for the people that are going to support it. You have to vote for the ones that are for your industry. And if they were against it at one point, maybe they're trying to right the wrongs by doing it the right way now because they see the light. A lot of people were wrong on this issue when it came to cannabis, and they changed their minds on it. I mean, how many of you buy your cannabis from an ex-cop? Let's be honest. So, there's a lot of ex-cops out there that have cannabis licenses, and some of you buy your cannabis from them by the ounces. So let's be honest, if you're afraid to vote for someone who locks somebody up, be afraid for buying cannabis from someone like that too. So
Exactly.
yeah, just let's not be hypocrites here. So that's all I have to say on that on this front. This is all I have to share on this thing right here. I do have one more thing. They do want to make it easier for independent groups to set up standards in medicine and dietary supplements. So that I like, because there's so many claims out there that aren't backed up by any kind of entity at all. You can make claims that cannabis will heal your head if it gets cut off or something like that. We don't need that running around. I'm not saying that's something that's going around or will, but I just don't want something silly like that on there, and that does make sense. They do need something. I mean, how do you feel about that last one before we end the show today, Val?
Well, I think that there's already, through the states that have started with medical, there's already so much information on that by doctors who have researched it and allowed different conditions to be added to lists and medical programs. So I definitely think that, and there's been much testimony on how this has helped folks. So I think that we already have a good reference point to start with, and they can pick it up from there.
100%. And yeah, I think there's a bunch of data that the states have already been collecting for 10 plus years now with adult sales, 20 something with possibly 30 something with medical. So there's a lot of information out there, yeah, that they can use once we go this route. So hopefully we'll see change here in the next few months, the next few years, and hopefully we get cannabis legalization, decriminalization, or something. Because yeah, the federal laws need to start catching up with the state laws, because it's causing a mess. I'm just glad that there are some suggestions that are being made from the federal government by the federal government, and these suggestions really, to be honest, I like most of these. Some of them need tweaking, and some of them kind of like, but for the most part, I really like these suggestions, and I hope some of them actually happen.
Yeah,
So
I agree with you. I hope that some of it happens. I don't always, I always say, this is a waiting game. So we just have to see how it rolls along.
100%, and it's a fight, and Valerie and I actually have been on the fight for legalized psilocybin for medical uses here in New Mexico too.
Yeah.
So that's something on the horizon too. So keep an eye on that. The 60-day session, we could see a bill go through. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. I'll keep you guys updated on that front. But yeah, I mean, progress is moving with it and everything, and we'll see what happens. But that's all I have for this episode. Thank you again, Grandmaster Advocate, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the years of the mentorship, and I look forward to more years and of your mentorship, and of course friendship too. Valerie's been a great friend to me for many years, and I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you joining me on the show today, Valerie. But of course. And do you have anything to say before we leave today?
No, I really don't. I just want to say thank you to Chad for having me on the show. I'm always appreciate that I'm remembered. I also want to say you must be your own best advocate. So let's step up and step out and come and get this show on the road with us.
100%. And I will see you guys in Farmington on Friday. I hope to see a bunch of you there to give us your input. You don't have to be a dispensary owner. You don't have to be someone important. You could be the guy who cleans the bathrooms and you have issues with the dispensary. It doesn't matter. Anybody in industry, ancillary, even
Steps.
even if you just prescribe cards, we want to hear from you. Like you are a important part of our program, especially on the medical side. So I want to thank my sponsor, Monster House. Again, check them out here in Las Cruces, especially that consumption lounge. I think they're going to be showing football, I hope, sometime soon. So we'll see. But yeah, check them out here in Las Cruces. Thank you for you guys for your contribution to the show and everything. And I will see you guys next week for another episode of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. All right, guys, shoots.